I wrong for telling my sister-in-law no one cares that she's pregnant? See, this is one of those posts where it's like, duh, you're the asshole, but then when I read it, it's like, oh, never mind, watch. Backstory. My cousin, 33 female, who I'll call Mary, lost her husband, 32 male, and 2 of her 3 children, 3 female and 9-month-old male, in a car accident last week. Her and her daughter, 5, are as you would expect, and it's just heartbreaking. Well, today was the funeral, and my brother's wife announced her pregnancy the second they arrived at our house this morning, and we were like, okay, congratulations, but please keep it on the down low for today. Well, when we arrived at the church, she kept making gagging sounds and rubbing her stomach, saying, I, as a mom, can't imagine what she's going through. They have no kids, so people would look at her and she'd tell them she was pregnant. Afterwards, at my aunt's house, my sister-in-law kept making everything about her. Like, someone was in the bathroom and my sister-in-law would loudly say, pregnant lady needs to pee. She literally told my cousin to give her her seat so the lady with the baby could rest her feet. I ignored her until she came to Mary, stuck out her flat belly and said, me and Isaac just found out I was pregnant, and honestly, we are beside ourselves. It could happen to us. Mary broke down crying. I snapped. Who says that to a woman who just literally lost 2 babies? I said loudly to my sister-in-law, no one gives an F you're pregnant. Look around. It's not just 1, but 2 babies' funerals, not to mention the love of Mary's life. Like, I knew you were an attention seeker, but for fuck's sake, you took the test 4 days ago. Just leave. Good for you. She did leave in tears, and my brother called me a fat, bitter bitch. Oh, what the fuck? I've gotten phone calls from my brother and my sister-in-law's family calling me the world of names because I made a pregnant woman cry. Mary and my aunt thanked me, but if I'm being honest, I feel bad about causing a scene. So please put me in my place if I'm wrong. Her husband, your brother should have pulled her aside and be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? Shut the fuck up. But if he don't do it, you can do it. So, little update. I found out this morning that my brother and my sister-in-law harassed my cousin with phone calls for her to talk to me about yesterday. My aunt gave both of them an earful and then made my cousin turn off her phone. My brother and my sister-in-law were at my parents' house trying to get their side in when I arrived. They both came at me screaming and yelling about my sister-in-law's feelings, and she couldn't miscarry from the stress I caused her. Sister-in-law said if I didn't lose my attitude and apologize, I'd never be in their child's life. Oh, brother, step up, brother. I told her I didn't care, and if she was going to use the kid as a weapon, I didn't want to be in their life anyway. Things got heated, and my father ended up kicking out my brother and my sister-in-law. So yeah, all this drama at a time, we should be there for one another. I'm so sorry you have to go through that, but your sister-in-law's fucking psycho. Your brother's whipped too. Am I the asshole for telling my wife the lock on my daughter's door does not get removed until my brother-in-law and his daughters are out of our house? My brother-in-law Sammy lost his home shortly after his divorce 10 months ago. He moved in with us and brought his twin daughters Olivia and Sloane, 18, with him a couple of months ago. His sister, my wife, and I have one daughter, Zoe, 16, and she and her cousins aren't close but get along fine. Olivia and Sloane have no respect for Zoe's privacy, none. They used to walk into her room and take everything they get their hands on. Makeup, phone, accessories, clothes, school laptop, etc. Zoe complained a lot, and I've already asked the girls to respect Zoe's privacy and stop taking things. My wife and Sammy saw no issue with this. After all, they're girls, and this is typical teenager girl behavior. I completely disagree. The last straw was when Zoe bought a $60 MAC makeup kit that looks like a paint set that she saved up for over a month, and one of the girls, Sloane, took it without permission and ruined it by mixing shades together while using it. Don't know much about makeup, but that's what Zoe said when she found the kit on her bed and was crying. I told my wife, and she said she asked Sloane to apologize, but I got Zoe a lock after I found out she was moving valuable belongings out of the house because of this incident. The girls were extremely upset. Sammy asked about it and I straight up told him. He said, my girls aren't thieves. It's normal that girls of the same age borrow each other's stuff. He said that Zoe could easily get another makeup kit for $15 from Walmart and shouldn't even be buying expensive adult makeup in the first place, and suggested my wife take care of this defect in Zoe's personality, trying to appear older than she is. Oh, this is where the claws come out. He accused me of being overprotective and babying Zoe with this level of enablement. I told him that this is between me and my wife, but she shamed me for putting a lock on Zoe's door for her cousins to see and preventing them from spending time with her, saying I was supposed to treat them like daughters, then demanded I remove it, but I said this lock does not get removed until her brother and his daughters are out of the house. She got mad I was implying we kicked them out and said her family will hate me for this, so I reminded her that I let Sammy and his family move in, which is something her own family refused to do, so she should start with shaming or blaming them for not taking their own son and nieces and granddaughters in. If it wasn't for her family's unwillingness to help, we wouldn't be dealing with this much disturbance at home. Everyone's been giving me and Zoe silent treatment, and my wife is very much upset over this. Go dad, good for you. Am I the asshole for telling my sister she would have been a terrible mother? I, 17 male, have 2 sisters, Alice 29 and Miranda 33. I'm much closer to Alice than I am to Miranda. Miranda is also not on good terms with our parents. Alice has 4 kids and is currently expecting child number 5, while Miranda can't have children, which her ex divorced her for. Miranda is very successful in life. She has a nice apartment, works a good job, and earns a decent amount of money. Alice, on the other hand, is struggling financially. She had her first child right out of high school and got pregnant with her second soon after. So she decided to become a stay-at-home mom for her children while her boyfriend provides for them. Me and my parents try to help them out as much as possible, be it childcare or money, whatever she needs. I love my nieces and nephew. I take them to the park and play with the older ones. I really enjoy it. Miranda doesn't help out with them. She says it's because she's too busy. Well, she works long hours, but she doesn't have kids, so I don't know what she does on the weekends. She also doesn't help out financially, which I find unfair, since she makes so much money and all she does is spend it on herself, although she does give us very nice gifts for Christmas and birthdays. So here comes the part where I may have been an asshole. You were already an asshole, so let's see what this is about. We got on the topic of Christmas presents, and I told her some of the stuff I wanted. She nodded and said she would give our parents a coupon for a much-needed vacation, and Alice some clothes she had mentioned, and also some new boots and jackets for her kids. I was a little stunned she didn't have any more for Alice, so I asked, why do you only get Alice the bare minimum? You can afford to help out more and you refused to out of spite. Miranda looked at me and laughed. She said it wasn't her business to feed 6 people, and that Alice was old enough to make her choices and live with the consequences. She knew what she was getting herself into and that she wouldn't pay Alice's way through life just because she kept having children she couldn't afford. I agree. I actually called me a bitch, but I agree. I was stunned at how cold she reacted. I asked her how she could live her life being so selfish and uncaring, and she got angry and told me, listen kid, there are some things you are way too young for to be discussing with me, and this is one of those. Drop the subject or get out. I agree with her. What the fuck? You're 17. You don't even have a real job. You haven't gone to school. You don't know the hardships of life. At that point, like, you cannot tell your grown-ass sister who worked her ass off to get where she is how to spend her money. I got really frustrated with her and said something I probably shouldn't have. No wonder your husband divorced you. Even if you could have children, you would be a terrible mother. Miranda got very quiet and told me to leave and never come back. She has now blocked me on everything, and though I don't agree with her not helping out, I'm starting to feel guilty for saying what I said. So, am I the asshole? Dude, yeah. Am I wrong for telling my boyfriend that he should have covered up his tattoos if he wanted any respect from my family? Oh, I'm already calling you the asshole here because that already just sounds really degrading and mean, and so I don't like that. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 2 years. We're polar opposites but managed to work through our differences in the past. Okay? For some context, he's almost 90% tattooed up to his neck, and comes from a difficult background to put it mildly. Today, he's employed and doing well for himself, but his upbringing was quite rough. I wouldn't describe myself as posh at all, but I come from a family where image, looks, and your accomplishments matter. However, I'd say I'm a little more casual than them. A few months ago, I finally got the courage to introduce him to my family. This was a huge deal to me, and I told him that first impressions would make or break everything. I told him that he will cover his tattoos, no ifs, ands, or buts, because my parents are super old-fashioned. I bought him an outfit for the night to ensure he looked presentable and classy. We had a practice run, and I told him what he should do and shouldn't say, how to talk, how to address any of my dad's concerns, etc. Oh my god, what is this? At no point did he ever show any enthusiasm, so that was a bad sign. You're basically saying, hey, you're not good enough for my parents, and so therefore they're gonna say you're not good enough for my daughter. Fast forward to dinner. It was an absolute disaster. Yes, my parents and sister were a little critical, but they're like that with any guy I date. My boyfriend was so pissed that he purposely unbuttoned the top of his shirt so you could see his tatted neck. Of course, that offended my parents, and a huge argument ensued. Not only were they telling him that he's not good enough for me, what did I say? They were telling me how disappointed they are. It was a nightmare. To make it worse, my boyfriend told them that I like his tattoos, which I do, but he was just adding fuel to the fire, and it didn't matter what they think. They told him to leave. See, this is where you fucked up. You should have had this conversation with your family before you brought your your boyfriend into this and make him feel like shit. You should have told him this is how he is. He has tattoos. If you want to meet him, great. If you don't, I'm not coming. Like, take it as that. Why would you? It goes without saying that my parents have zero respect for him now. It was already difficult to convince them that he's much sweeter than he may appear. My mom has been hysterical and asking why I'm having intimate relations with someone who looks like they belong in prison. He's not a criminal. Well, you made him sound like one. I have been guilt-tripped and made to feel like complete shit, all because he chose to wreak havoc. He didn't choose to wreak havoc. Why are you saying that? Like, you fucked up. Oh my god, I feel so bad for him. A couple of days ago, we were arguing, and I told him that he should have hid his tattoos if he wanted any respect from people like my family. He was hurt and said that it's fucked up that I want him to change to gain respect from them. He even claimed that I'm obviously embarrassed to be associated with him and not even worthy of respect in his eyes. None of that is true, just saying. After the argument, we haven't talked much. So, am I the asshole for telling my boyfriend that he should have covered his tattoos if he wanted to establish a level of respect my parents could work from? It's not that they bother me. I think he's crazy attractive, tattoos or not, but he knew that my parents would freak out. I want to know how old you are because you sound like you're fucking 15. What is this? He's not a dog. You don't coach him on what to say and what to do and how to dress, how to act. Like, this is who you...
Storytime about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on an all-girls trip. So a little background information, I was 14 or 15 around the time, and it was the summer of my freshman year. So within the last few weeks of my 8th grade year, one of the more popular boys asked me out, and we're gonna call him Carson. I wasn't like super popular at the school, but I was like a medium maybe. But I was raised in a super strict household, where the only phone that I pretty much had was one that was able to call 911 and my parents. And I especially was not allowed to be talking to boys. So Carson had the great idea of giving me his old phone, and throughout the summer I would text him on there. Well, I started realizing him getting really toxic. Anytime that he would see my Snapchat location change, he would be like, "Where are you going? Why didn't you tell me you were going here?" So I started distancing myself a little bit from him. Also because our relationship was just moving way too fast. Within the first month of us dating, he was talking about wanting to marry me. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I started distancing myself from him because he became too attached and was just way too toxic. Well, I was also in a lot of clubs in school, and a few of them would require me to go on trips. Well, the one that I went on was an all-girls trip, and before I left, I texted Carson letting him know that I wouldn't have my phone all week. Well, on the last night of my trip, there was a girls and boys dance. There was like a group of boys from a different school that we were meeting up with, and I tried staying back at the cabin, but they wouldn't let me. So we started doing dances that required partners. So I was pretty much forced to dance with one of the boys. Well, when I came back home, I got 100 texts from Carson calling me a bunch of nasty names, and you can probably guess them. And somebody got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys, and Carson sent it to me and said, "We're done." So after that, I just ignored him. And then literally that night at 1 a.m., he was texting me saying, "I miss you, please come back to me," like for part 3. Part 3 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I received over 100 messages from him. He got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys and said, "We're done." And then at 1 in the morning, he's like, "I miss you so much. Please don't leave me. Like, I've been doing so bad while you were gone." So of course I didn't accept his apology, and I just blocked him on all my social media. And the next day I wake up to messages on my Instagram, my Snapchat, my Facebook. Like, who even uses that? Unless you're talking to family. Well, then Carson decides to tell everybody at my school about how I'm a lying, cheating scumbag. And now, 3 years later, no good guy from my school wants to date me. So now whenever I'm talking to a guy, I have to make sure that they're not affiliated with Carson in any way. But low-key, I had a really good glow-up, so all the hot boys want to talk to me now. And Carson's pretty much still a scumbag. Storytime about the scariest night of my life. A lot of background information. So the one weekend, my sister and I decided that we were going to go to my stepdad's, and her best friend was going to come also. I was around 13 at the time. Well, my stepdad and my mom had been broken up for about a few months, but my dad was okay with us going to our stepdad's because he had been with our mom for around 7 years and he's always been good to us. And my stepdad's was 2 hours away. So fast forward, we get to his house, and my sister and her friend wanted to go to a party. Now, me being older now, I knew that they didn't want to bring me because they were around 16 and I was only 13, but I still tried to tag along. Well, they weren't really talking to me or anything, and I hadn't seen my mom in almost a year. So I told my stepdad that I wanted to go and see her, which was a super big deal because she absolutely hated my stepdad. And she didn't want him around us. And by the way, she lived like 5 minutes from him. So if she found out that we went all the way up there to see him and not her, she would have flipped. So he drives me to my mom's house, like for part 2. Part 2 about the worst night of my life. So before I got to my mom's house, I called her. And I pretty much just told her that I was with my stepdad and I wanted to come see her. Like I said, she lived 5 minutes away. So as soon as we pull up, she walks outside. And she starts screaming at my stepdad. She's like, "Those are my kids. You're not allowed to see them, blah, blah, blah." Even though my dad had full custody and he could decide who we could and couldn't see. So after that, we walk in the house. She isn't saying anything. And this house is pretty much like a trap house. There was a knife holding the door shut. Not a kitchen knife, like an actual knife that you stab people with. She's like, "You can sit down, make yourself comfortable." And I didn't want to sit down because I saw needles everywhere and I just saw a rat crawl under the couch. So I was like, "No, I'm fine." And then she was like, "Sorry, not everybody can be rich like you." Which, just to make clear, I'm not rich. I just knew that she was doing drugs with her boyfriend in that house. After that, she pulls the knife that was holding the door shut out and points it right at me, like for part 3. 3 about the worst night of my life. So before she points the knife at me, she had been in the kitchen, right? So I went to go and sneak out the door. That's whenever she ran over, ripped the knife out of the door, and pointed it right at me. And she's like screaming a bunch of shit at me. And she's like, oh, what, are you gonna tell your dad that I pointed a knife at you? And I told her, yeah, like, what the fuck do you mean? Am I not gonna tell him? So at this point, she tries to take my phone. I told her, no, you're not taking my phone. And at this time, my sister's also texting me and yelling at me because she had told me that I should not go to my mom's house. Probably for that exact reason. A few minutes later, she hears her boyfriend pull up. I had never met her boyfriend. Like I said, I haven't seen her in probably almost a year. As soon as she hears him pull up, she looks at me and she says, go out the back door. She literally hurries up, takes me to the back door, and I have to run out the back door. I don't even know where I am. My sister and stepdad were waiting at the gas station across the street, so I ran over there really quickly. And then a few things happened after that. Let me know if you guys want a part 4. About the worst night of my life. Just a little side note, I am in bed, so it's going to be a black screen, and you can probably hear my dog snoring. I'm just going to go from my point of view the rest of the time because I texted my sister, but I think she's sleeping. So pretty much I had to call my sister after my mom told her to go out the back door. And there was a Sheetz right across from where she was. But since she had to go out the back, she just saw like all woods and no gas station. So I got on the phone with her. She runs over to the gas station. And when we get back to my stepdad's house, we call our dad and let him know what happened. And the police actually got involved. And they had called my dad because my mom had called them and told him a bunch of stuff that just wasn't true. Like saying that my stepdad was a pedophile and stuff, just like saying stuff that could actually ruin this man's life. And usually my stepdad would come pick us up and then drop us back off. But the police said that my dad had to come get us tomorrow morning, even though he had full custody and could decide who we could go with and stuff. So my dad came the next day and picked us up. Story time about how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So a little background information. This all happened whenever I was in 6th grade. This all happened on a Tuesday night. So I had school the next day. Well, my dad had went to work earlier in the day. Well, around 10 o'clock at night, we hadn't heard from my dad all day, which was super weird for him because he was always home around 10 o'clock. And even if he wasn't, he still would have kept in contact with us and let us know where he was at. So at this point, my family and I were really scared, and we're thinking that something happened to him. I was calling and texting him. My mom was calling and texting him. My whole family was pretty much trying to get a hold of him. Like, we had called all the hospitals to see if he was there. We called police stations to see if he might have been in jail or if they had his last name in the system. So nobody had heard or seen from him. So we all went to sleep that night hoping that he would show up in the morning. So the next day after I got home from school, my mom came home from work and she had told me about this phone call that she got. Like for part 2. Part 2 of how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So like I said, my mom had gotten home from work and she told me about this phone call that she got while she was at work. So apparently one of her coworkers called her and said, hey, I think I saw your husband on the news. So after that, she showed me the news article and I couldn't even believe what I was reading. So I guess my dad had been drinking and he went to an auto repair shop and stole a car because I guess the keys were left in the door of the car. And what makes this even worse, the car that he stole had 2 guns in the trunk. And they weren't 2 pistols, these were 2 big ass guns that were fucking loaded. Oh wait, I forgot something. So before this, he had been at the strip club and somehow he ended up in pink lingerie. Guys, I cannot make this shit up. So he was driving around and he decided to park right in the middle of an intersection and it was literally causing a whole fucking scene. There were people with their kids worried as hell. So after that, a few people called the cops, like for part 3. Part 2 about how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So like I said, my dad parked in the middle of an intersection and people were calling the cops. So when the police arrived, my dad was half passed out in the car. This happened in like the middle of broad day, like there's traffic everywhere. So when they finally get up to the car, my dad is literally slumped in the driver's seat. There was a bottle of whiskey in the door and it was completely empty. When they went to arrest him, he started resisting. He was screaming a bunch of profanities at them and started kicking them, threatening them with guns, which made the situation worse because my dad had no clue that there were any guns in the back of the car. So that just made the police think that they were his. So they take my dad to jail and he has like 7 charges against him. But we were happy because we knew where he was. Well, the worst part is, so the next day when I went to school, people were coming up to me asking if that was my dad on the news. Some people were even making fun of me because of what he did. And that's really fucking embarrassing for a 12-year-old. But it's okay, Dad, I still love you. Story time about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So a little background information. I was in my sophomore year of high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for about 6 months. And he had been best friends with this girl, we're gonna call her Addie, for about 3 years. Now, I had known Addie way before that, probably since we were in kindergarten. But her and I weren't like BFFs, we were more of acquaintances. Obviously, we became friends because she was always around my boyfriend. A month after him and I started dating, I decided that we had to set boundaries for their friendship. Because they had first period together, right? Well, every morning at 9:45, I would go on Snapchat and I would see a picture of them. And it would be her kissing him on the cheek. Not only would it be on her story, but it would also be on his. And I had her on Snapchat before that. She had never done that, ever. So he said that he had talked to Addie about it, right? And things were good for the next 2 months. Then they were forced to work together on a project. Like for part 2. About why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So like I said, they had been forced to work together on a school project. At least that's what he told me. So I brushed it off because I was not about to seem like the jealous girlfriend. Well, the next day, him and I were supposed to go out to the movies. So I texted him right before we were about to leave, and I said, "Hey, are you on your way to get me?" He goes, "OMG, no, I'm sorry, I forgot. I have to work with Addie on this project. She's about to come over my house." So at this point, I'm like really pissed off. So I text him and I say, "I thought you guys had a whole week to work on this project. Why does it have to be tonight?" Addie knew that him and I were supposed to go to the movies that night also. He said, "We just want to get it done really quickly so that way I can spend the rest of the week with you." And she's snapping me the whole time that she's at his house off of his phone. So at around 1:30 a.m., I get a Snapchat from her on his account, and she's laying on his chest. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So like I said, she snaps me at 1:30 in the morning, a picture of her laying on his chest, and it's captioned, "Hey girlie, I hope you don't mind, but I have to spend the night at his house. He lost track of time working on our project, and it's way too late for him to take me home." So at this point, I'm furious, and I don't snap her back. So the next morning, I call my boyfriend, and I asked him, "Hey, is Addie still there?" So he says yeah, and then I ask him to put me on speakerphone. So when he does, I say hi to Addie. She goes, "OMG, hey girl, how are you?" And that's when I pretty much go off on this bitch. I tell him that while he was asleep, she was sending me pictures of her laying on top of him off of his Snapchat, and that she was sending those type of pictures to multiple people on his Snapchat because my best friend had texted me that morning saying that she thought that we broke up because Addie was sending her pictures of her laying on top of him. So I tell him, "Pick, me or her." And she starts crying. After a minute of silence, he hangs up the phone and then blocks me. Good luck to the next girl.
Saw you coming until you turned me around. I used to think I was nothing, but look at this love we found. So give me your hand like you took mine. No, I don't ever want to see you cry. Oh, yeah, no more tears. Oh, yeah, no more tears. Take that chance, we'll be fine. No, I don't ever want to see you.
I'm 36 female. I recently moved into a new house with my husband, 37, which is a nice suburban neighbourhood. Originally, there was no problem, and then trouble arose. Our neighbours on one side consist of a father and 4 kids. They seem nice enough and quiet. I don't know how old the kids are, but there are 2 tween boys and a younger girl and boy. When it happened, my husband was at work and I was driving home. As I was driving down the street, I saw one of the older boys walk into my yard, bend down, pick up a ball and go back to his house. I was angry because I was raised with the idea of never trespassing into someone's yard like that without permission. I confronted the boy and he said he was sorry, but you can tell he really didn't mean it. So I went and talked to his father, and I didn't get anywhere there. He didn't seem to take me seriously at all, and he told me that I was overreacting. I felt like he was invalidating my feelings, and I snapped and told him that he better not let his kids trespass in my yard again, otherwise I would call the police, and he called me an idiot, so he escalated into name-calling first and shut the door in my face. I'm angry. My husband hasn't said much, but he's promised to install security cameras, so I want to know, am I the idiot here? Wait, so all he did was walk into your yard to retrieve a ball? This is making you sound like the villain of a children's cartoon. You are the idiot. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, I had a neighbour like this growing up. I was always confused by why she lived in the neighbourhood if she couldn't handle the occasional ball landing on her grass, people playing music in the middle of the day, or a dog barking when playing with its owner in its yard without calling the police. So I was very happy when I saw her wheeled away into an ambulance. She needed help. I don't want to be enemies for no good reason. Too late. You destroyed any chance of a positive or even neutral relationship with this neighbour. Also, suppose he talks to the other neighbours since you're new to this neighbourhood. In that case, it's going to be very difficult to make friends with anyone in the neighbourhood. I'd suggest making a buttload of cookies or something and taking it next door, offer a sincere apology, beg for forgiveness, and a chance to start afresh. Wow, I expected she caught them camping in her yard, swimming in her pool, this type of thing. But OP is annoyed a kid went to her yard to retrieve his ball. You are the idiot. Judging by the post, yard is not fenced in or gated. Is he supposed to wait potentially hours for you to get home so he can retrieve his ball? No, he goes and grabs it and walks back to his house with literally no harm done. The dad called you an idiot because you were being one. I, 25 male, am the youngest of 3 siblings. My sisters are 33 and 31. My parents, 63 female and 60 male, are owners of a grocery store that was passed down through my father's side of the family for generations. On both my dad and mom's side, my grandparents left my siblings and me each a college trust fund of $100,000. Each of my sisters blew through their money and dropped out of college. They became single mothers to my 3 young nieces and returned to work for my parents' store. I was the only kid who didn't work for my parents' business. I got a job as a landscaper for the summers and after school throughout my entire high school years and saved up about $20,000. I got accepted into college on a partial scholarship, and I was beyond thrilled because I knew I had a great opportunity to leave college debt-free and own my own home by the time I was 22. Just as my sisters did when they turned 18, I asked my parents to turn over access to the trust. I wanted to have the money under my control just like my sisters did. That's when my parents told me we would discuss this at dinner tonight. So at the dinner, my whole family was there, including my nieces. When it was time to talk about my trust, my dad and mom asked me if I would consider holding off on accessing the trust for 2 years, as they had to use some of the money to cover healthcare and living costs of their grandkids, and also pay off a lawsuit that my sister Gloria received for a DUI. I asked how much they used, and my mom said there is currently $5,000 left in the account. So they spent $95,000 and none of it went to me. My dad said, "We just need you to think about your family and understand that we need your help in this request. Isn't it great that everyone benefited from this money besides the person it was intended for?" Gloria and Laurie got to go to college and travel the world with their money, while I got to pay for all their mistakes with my money. So my last words to my family were, this was not a request as the decision was already made, and I moved out and left. I still went to college as I had a partial scholarship. Over those years, I used the money I had in my savings to start my own landscaping business, which employs 6 guys, and we're doing great. I never got a chance to spend any of the money my grandparents left for me as my parents never built the trust back up. Finally, 2 years ago, I found out from my lawyer when I sent in a formal request to access the trust that the current balance was $3,456.13, less than the $5,000 my parents told me about. My sisters and parents have tried to reconnect throughout the years, but I've always resent every gift, letter, and invitation they've sent me back to them. I'm getting married next month, and my fiancé wants to meet my family and help me close this chapter in my life. My fiancé wants me to forgive and move on as I haven't spoken to them in years. But am I in the wrong for telling my fiancé sorry, but I cannot move on from this? Tell your fiancé you love what she's trying to do, but you were robbed of $100,000 and they cease being worthy of the term family. When they come back with repayment plus interest, then reconciliation can begin. Why didn't you sue the trustees of the estate? You really should have. There's a lot of stigma against calling the law on family. OP's mad, but it doesn't sound like he's interested in suing his parents. This is an extremely common reaction here. Sue your parents, send your parents to jail, call the cops on your parents. But most people want their parents to come clean and be accountable for their actions, rather than send their 70-year-old mom to prison to crochet blankets with skulls on them. Someone steals $100,000 from me, no way they get to stay in my life. You are all adults. Obviously, this is just my opinion, but that is more than enough reason to not trust these people in your life. You won't ever get that money back, and the fact that the amount now has gone down instead of up when they promised to eventually pay you back says that they also lied to you. Good on you for moving on without them and doing well. You did enough for them without your consent already. Update. I refuse to forgive my family, sisters, and my parents until they pay me back the inheritance they spent on themselves. So much has happened since I told my story. My fiancé admitted to speaking with my family on Facebook Messenger. They also spoke in person when she said they met each other in a restaurant. Happened a month ago. Fiancé said it was very emotional. I told my fiancé I'm extremely disappointed that she withheld this information from me for a month. Fiancé told me she felt guilty and afraid to tell me because she thought I might break up with her and cancel the wedding if I found out. She wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell me. However, yesterday my mom called her directly, begging her to help me reunite our family. She missed so much of my life and she doesn't want to miss another milestone, wedding. Fiancé knows she's violated my trust and gave me the most heart-melting, sincere apology I ever heard in my life and asked for forgiveness. She even had her parents ask me to forgive her and not cancel the wedding. Her dad and mom told me they loved me and hoped I could move past this. Her dad loves me. He literally has a picture of me in his office. Just me and him, LOL. Introduces me as his son for the past 2 years. He cried and said he doesn't want to lose me as a son. I forgave my fiancé. Sisters came to my business with my nieces and desperately wanted to talk. Sisters deeply regret their part in the decisions made on their behalf and want to be a family again. They understand my position and anger, but they miss me and want me back in their lives. My nieces also ask why I don't come round anymore and am I mad at them. Sisters explain this has destroyed our parents' marriage, as it has now come out that my mom apparently spent the majority of the money without my dad knowing. When he found out, my mom wanted dad to say it was both of their decision, because she believes if it came out that it was her that decided by herself and not my dad, that I would never forgive her no matter what and would disown her because I always accused her of playing favourites. To be honest, she's right. I would have disowned her. My mom pleaded with my dad to cover for her decision to empty my fund. Dad was furious but decided to say he and my mom decided to spend the money. Dad now resents our mom because he no longer has a relationship with his only son. He also hears from his friends how great of a relationship I and father-in-law have. I call father-in-law Dad. He calls me his son. Dad told my mother either she fixes this or he is done with her, and he's telling me the truth. I told my sisters that I love them and my nieces and I do not hate them. However, they helped rob me of a very important gift that our grandparents gave each of us, and I missed out on life experiences that they got to experience. It is like they stole the last gift our grandparents left for me. We all cried and I accepted their apology, but I told them I don't know how to let go of my resentment towards them. I let them know our relationship will take time to rebuild. I asked them to set up a meeting with just me and Dad and not my mom. I met with my dad alone. My dad was shocked that I requested the meeting. He looked defeated and asked to speak first. My dad told me he is and has been depressed for the last few years and feels like he truly failed me as my father. He knows he betrayed me, and as a father, he must take that to his grave that he is the reason his son hates him. He said he's extremely jealous of my relationship with my father-in-law, and he just started crying for like 3 minutes straight. I told him I know it was Mom who decided to spend the money. I told him I understand why he didn't throw Mom under the bus, but he deeply hurt me by covering for Mom's decision this long. I told him I love him and said he doesn't owe me anything anymore. He's done owing Mom's debt. We both cried and hugged for like 5 minutes. I invited him, my sisters and my nieces over to dinner at my place that night, without Mom. I let my sisters and my dad know that this would be the last time we speak if they came to the dinner with my mom with them. My mom clearly found out about the reunion without her and wanted to speak. I refused her request and told her, please bring a check for $100,000 if you want to talk to me. My wedding is in a month and I have since invited everyone but my mom. My sisters want me to hear Mom's side of the story and my dad has said he is done covering for my mom's decision. My fiancé is happy and supports my decision 100%, even though I know she wants me to meet with my mother. She just got forgiven herself, so she doesn't want to push it. Should I meet with my mom before or after she hands me the check for $100,000? Wow, it kind of seems like your sisters use their kids to manipulate you into feeling guilty for leaving. Yet, in all this time, no one has saved a dime to repay you. Look, I get it. they're wearing you down. Stand firm. They took the money. They can all chip in and pay it back. They're not disabled. They can work. Don't let them apologize without making amends. And they're still on your mom's side. That's why they want you to hear her out. My advice, slow way down. It took them years to break your relationship. Don't rush into mending it. I'd rethink the wedding invite. You went too easy on your sisters. They're all guilty the same as Mom. They burned through the money. Do you think your mom gave it to them without nagging? Your dad and nieces are innocent, but your sisters were not 12 when they knew they robbed you of your life. You had to work your butt because they used stuff left for you, and now they got a bailout. The only good person in this scenario is your dad and nieces. Children are innocent. I would invite only dad and nieces, literally, and skip on sisters and mom if I were you. You do realize that every one of them is manipulating you, right? You see, your family are throwing your mother under the bus for doing something they all had a part in. It wasn't just her idea while they were throwing away your 100,000. Still, now because they want to be at your wedding, it's suddenly all her idea and they wanted no part in it. Suspicious, don't you think? The person you're going to marry guilt-tripped you and manipulated you into staying. She wasn't thinking about you when she contacted your family. She was thinking only of herself. I'm 18 female, and about a month ago I started therapy for eating issues and other things. The therapist did several things that made me slightly uncomfortable. She constantly brought up my appearance and told me how I have nothing to feel insecure about, asked me to stand up and point to parts of my body I don't like, and compared me to herself every chance she got. I didn't think too much of these things at first, as my dad is paying for the sessions, and I thought that maybe this was just me getting used to a new person. What happened today was the last straw. She asked me to stand up and lift up my shirt. I didn't even bother asking why. I just told her she was making me uncomfortable and left. I told the person at the front desk what happened and drove home. My dad is angry. He said I should have told him about all of this before doing something so drastic, telling the front desk person. He says it was inappropriate to just leave the session like that when I could have just said no, and that I should have told him how I was feeling before he paid for the sessions. He should have been the first to hear. I genuinely am confused about this situation. I feel okay that I left, but I'm not sure if I handled it correctly. Was there something I should have done differently? You are not the idiot, and your father couldn't be more wrong. His comment that you just could have said no shows that he has a fundamental misunderstanding of a patient's vulnerability in a therapy situation and the position of authority that a therapist holds. Honestly, you were super brave to take the initiative to walk out when you felt uncomfortable. You were not required to stay and confront her if that didn't feel safe or like something you were capable of doing in that moment, and any good, legitimate therapist would tell you that. Not the idiot. Why would a mental health therapist ever ask you to lift your shirt? That's troubling. I wonder how many other young girls she did this to, and they just accepted it. An OP, you need to file an official report. Not the idiot. You were standing up for yourself. Too many girls get hurt, physically, mentally, or emotionally, because they're afraid to be rude. I'm proud of you, and your dad should be too. Also, I don't think it's appropriate for the therapist to talk about herself or compare you to her. I'm no expert, but aren't body comparisons a trigger of eating disorders for some people? She sounds awful. So me, 28 male, and my wife, 28, have been married for about 4 years and have known each other for over a decade. We both work full-time and earn an almost similar amount. However, she's been struggling with severe depression and other mental health issues for her whole life. I've been her support for almost a decade now whenever she's down, her words, not mine. In 2019, some tragedy happened in her family and she was heartbroken. I was there with her the whole time, taking care of her. Since then, I've taken over all the housework, cooking, cleaning, laundry, and buying groceries. Last month, I sat down with her and asked if she can start helping me out with it since it's been almost 2 years since she's done any housework. She hesitated but said, yeah. So she started making dinner twice a week, and I do 4 times, 1 day takeout. She does a bit of cleaning as well. The problem is that I think she's deliberately doing things halfway, like undercooking chicken, so I end up making something else or not vacuuming carpet areas, even though 70% of our house is carpet and other similar things, so I end up doing them myself anyway. I know she can do better because she used to do it before the thing happened back in 2019. I'm pretty sure that she thought if she did things half-hearted, I'd just end up asking her not to do anything and go back to doing everything myself. Instead, I sat down to talk to her about it and asked why she's doing it. She burst out crying and accused me of being insensitive because she's had a hard time and I'm being horrible. I just don't know what to do, to be honest. I can't be her maid her whole life when we're working the same amount, but I can't eat raw chicken or steak cold in the middle. Yes, I may sound a bit insensitive here because I've worked so hard helping her through everything and got called insensitive by her and told to do it myself if I don't like undercooked chicken. But I just want a bit of load off my shoulders after 2 years of this. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot, but what you're experiencing now is what wives have been experiencing for centuries. Your wife's mental health is affecting your marriage. You have the right to be happy. Consider an ultimatum on counselling or it will go on forever. I don't want to be drastic, but this has been going on for 2 years and she refuses to help herself. At this point, I think she's taking advantage of OP's kindness and patience. This is not how a healthy relationship works. She should pull her weight. I believe it's time for OP to think about himself and leave if she doesn't change. We constantly advise women to leave useless, lazy men. It's no different here, and I don't see why OP should put up with this mistreatment. Why did she burst into tears? Because something had happened years ago? That doesn't make sense. You're having a conversation about chores. Why would an event from years ago come into this discussion? On the face of it, not the idiot, but it sounds like there could be more to this.